News broke today of Joe Biden dropping out of the presidential race. Now, for some of this was not news because Newsmax TV, actually Mark Halperin of Newsmax TV, first broke this story as a definitive fact, something that would happen over the weekend. His sources were telling the Newsmax audience that Joe Biden would be dropping out, and Kamala Harris would not be picked as the successor. Like, he would not endorse Kamala Harris. Now, for those of you who know the news, Kamala Harris did end up getting picked as the vice president. So it does make that reporting interesting, but I'm going to read Joe Biden's statement here. And I think that might explain part of that reporting. So here it is. This is the statement. Joseph R. Biden Jr., July 21st, 2024. My fellow Americans, over the past 3.5 years, we have made great progress as a nation. Today, America has the strongest economy in the world. We've made historic investments in rebuilding our nation and lowering prescription drug costs for seniors and in expanding affordable health care to a record number of Americans. We've provided critically needed care to 1 million veterans exposed to toxic substances, passed the first gun safety law in 30 years, appointed the first African-American woman to the Supreme Court, and passed the most significant climate legislation in the history of the world. I mean, those are not all things that I'm on board with, but I mean, you have to admit that these are accomplishments to varying degrees. America has never been better positioned to lead than we are today. Okay, fam. All right. Okay, buddy. Okay, Uncle Joe. I know none of this could have been done without you, the American people. Together, we overcame a once-in-a-century pandemic and the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. We protected and preserved our democracy, and we've revitalized and strengthened our allies around the world. It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president, and while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I, of course, believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term. I will speak to the nation later this week in more detail about my decision. Ooh, so he's going to give a speech. That's exciting. For now, let me express my deepest gratitude to those who have worked so hard to see me reelected. I want to thank Vice President Kamala Harris for being an extraordinary leader in all this work, and let me express my heartfelt appreciation to the American people for the faith and trust you have placed in me. I believe today what I always have, that there is nothing America can't do when we do it together. We just have to remember we are the United States of America, which is a nicely worded and typed out speech that was presented for Joe Biden to sign off on and approve of. It's a fine enough statement. However, I think one thing that's key that not a lot of people are talking about, I think I heard some people mention this, but not a whole lot of people talked about this. That statement did not say that Kamala Harris would be endorsed by Joe Biden. However, we did end up getting this. This is from Joe Biden's Twitter account. X account. It says, "My fellow Americans, I have decided not to accept the nomination and to focus all my energies on my duties as president for the remainder of my term. My very first decision as the party nominee in 2020 was to pick Kamala Harris as my vice president. It's been the best decision I've made. So today, I want to offer my full support and endorsement for Kamala to be the nominee of our party this year. Democrats, it's time to come together and beat Trump. Let's do this. And if you're with us, donate to her campaign here." Now, this includes an endorsement of Kamala Harris, but this does not. Now, if you watch the clip, let me see if I can find Newsmax's clip of Mark Halperin speaking. I think it actually would be worth bringing this up. Yep, here we go. This is from 2 days ago. This is when the news broke, at least to me, that this was going to happen, because I was listening to Newsmax at the time. This is what Mark Halperin had to say, and it makes sense when you put in the fact that Kamala Harris was not mentioned as an endorsement in the PDF file, but she was mentioned in the X post.
Carl, according to multiple Democratic sources, this is happening all of a sudden. Everyone said it would happen gradually and then all at once, and that's what's happening. According to my sources, President Biden has agreed to step down as the Democratic nominee.
Oh, man.
It will happen as early as this weekend. A speech has been drafted for him.
Now, that speech is probably... Now, the speech could be referencing one of two things. The speech could be referencing the planned statement that Biden will be giving later on this week, but it could also be referring to the document that was posted in the PDF. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Maybe the PDF is just a truncated version of what the actual speech is going to be. But nonetheless, I think it's very possible that Joe Biden finally agreed to step down, and then people like on his behalf said, "Oh, and I endorse Kamala Harris," because actually, I'm gonna let him finish, and then I'll give my commentary.
He will continue on as president, is his intention. He also will not, I'm told, endorse Vice President Harris as his successor. They're hoping that he will endorse an open process in which the convention will be open to Vice President Harris and a few other candidates in Chicago to pick the Democratic nominee for president. The belief is that Vice President Harris is already looking at potential running mates to go to Chicago with a full ticket, including one possibility, Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky, and perhaps the governor of Pennsylvania, Governor Shapiro. Other possible candidates who are being talked about include Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, perhaps Gretchen Whitmer, and again, the vice president running. On the first ballot, the regular delegates would be allowed to vote under this agreement that's being talked about amongst the president and high-level Democratic officials. The regular delegates would vote on the first ballot. If there is no winner on the first ballot, the so-called superdelegates would be allowed to vote on the subsequent ballot. This decision was reached, I'm told, all of a sudden because of the high-level pressure from Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama, and others, and as well as the decision of many of President Biden's top aides that there was no path forward for him, that he would not be able to win this election, win the general election. And therefore, he's stepping aside again as early as this weekend.
So that is crazy. Now, many of you guys might be like, "Oh, well, it's just Newsmax, a right-wing, a right-wing political outlet." I can understand your hesitancy. However, you have to consider the fact that this is coming straight from Mark Halperin. Mark Halperin is no right-wing hack. He's a relative moderate, but when you watch him on mainstream television, he always came off as almost to the right. He had I think a political show on Bloomberg TV. That's kind of how I found out about him, where the program was actually extremely balanced. It was one of my favorite mainstream media political analysis programs while it was still on the air. I forget what it was called, but I did quite enjoy it. So Mark Halperin is no hack, and because he is actually he's like moderate, but he's still on the left. He's like a moderate lefty. He has connections to Democrats and people in the party, probably people in Joe Biden's cabinet as well. So it is not in the least far-fetched to think that Joe Biden and Mark Halperin would have contacts in common that would allow Mark Halperin to kind of be accurate in this assessment. So I think at the time that this was said, this was entirely accurate. This was entirely true. Now, apparently, things between Biden and Kamala Harris have always been rocky, which is why I'm a bit surprised, along with this report, I'm a bit surprised that Joe Biden ended up picking Kamala Harris as his successor. However, to be fair, you have to consider the fact that if Kamala Harris was not running in Joe Biden's stead, all of that Joe Biden-Kamala Harris campaign money would have been for naught. It would not be able to be spent or used in any way. So it would have been a massive waste to not go with Kamala Harris. While Kamala Harris, I think, is a relatively weak candidate. Like, you have to remember that she almost came in last, more or less, in the Democratic nomination process, I believe, all the way back in, was it 2020? I think it was, 2020. And they kind of became very bitter political rivals at that point. But she had to drop out just because she wasn't connected with voters. People have memed her, all over the entirety of the internet. She's literally being memed right now as we speak. So like, she's not someone who is going to, I think, connect with the majority of voters on a personal level. However, I do think that she does have a one massive appeal, which is that for many Democrats, for whatever reason, they like how Joe Biden has been running things, and they are content enough with the state of America as it exists today. And to be fair, it's not like the sky is exactly falling. I think inflation is slowly but surely starting to decrease back to pre-Joe Biden numbers. I think unemployment isn't rising anymore. Gas prices are starting to descend as well. I think you still have problems to think about, like you've got illegal immigration, you've got violence coming up out of that. So it's not like all is well, but America has not necessarily collapsed, and I think a lot of Democrats are going to be thinking that things are good enough. So that's going to be one segment of Democrat voters, and that's why I think that Kamala Harris actually is a stronger candidate than a lot of Republicans assume. A lot of Republicans assume that they'll be able to just like walk all over Kamala Harris and decimate her and end up having a red wave. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think Trump will have a strong victory, but it's not going to be a complete landslide, just because there are enough Democrats who are looking at the state of America and they're like, this is good enough, that they don't necessarily they're not going to be swayed by Kamala Harris's strange cackling. I don't think it's going to be as big of a factor, because you've got the double whammy, right? You keep Hitler out of the White House, and America is not horrible. Those two things are extremely appealing to Democrats. So I think for that reason, Kamala Harris is the strongest candidate. And I think I've said on this stream before on YouTube that Gavin Newsom wouldn't be a horrible candidate. And you'd have to take a look at the red versus blue debate. You can check out my Non-Newbie Highlights channel where I uploaded my reaction to that debate. But if you look at the red versus blue debate that Gavin Newsom had against Ron DeSantis, Gavin Newsom actually did extraordinarily well. Not because he was right on the issues. He's actually wrong on a lot of the issues, and he's run his state extremely poorly. However, he has that winsome, appealing presidential personality that every candidate needs if they're going to be president of the United States, if they're going to win the election. So I think that, and hey, let's be honest. I think that those are really the only two main options here. I think a lot of people have flirted around Gretchen Whitmer's name, but I think too few people are even familiar with her in order for her to even get the name recognition that she needs in order to be a successful nominee for the Democratic Party, let alone for her to win the election. So I think that going with Kamala Harris for the Democratic Party is actually the way to go if it's something that's viable for them. I don't know if they will need to change their processes or anything in order to, pick her. The other votes might actually just stick with her because she's on the same ticket. So all the campaign stuff is all supposed to connect and things. So, but yeah, that was wild news. And I'm actually very happy about it because I think it's like sort of like a win-win. I think that any candidate at this point that the Democrats can throw up or are willing to throw up against Donald Trump is gonna beat. So this is not a big threat to Donald Trump's campaign. However, if you look at this from how this affects Joe Biden is going to be able to finally fully relax and retire. This man is old. I think this guy has been in politics like longer than my parents have been alive. This is Joe Biden has had a very long and storied political career, and regardless of what you think of the guy, I think that anyone who's served in the government for that long deserves to retire and not die at a podium or something, or like in some political chamber while actually being part of their elected position. But I think that, he deserves to, retire and die, in his home, right? He deserves to be eating more chocolate chip, hanging out at the beach, spending time with his grandkids for once. Like, I think that Joe Biden really, he should have that rest. And I think that whoever's managing him, some people have said elder abuse. I think it's very possible. In any case, I think that he's just been like, he's been run very rough. I think it'd be fair to point out. We already have noticed that he's got that ugly, nasty cough in his lungs that he has not been able to get rid of, despite the fact that it's been several months. Who knows if whether or not, a few weeks of a good night's rest and, no longer having all these stressful, strenuous activities to do each and every single day, who knows if, after all of that, Joe Biden will be able to recover and heal from that. You also have to take into the account as well that like each and every year that Joe Biden has been president, his cognitive decline has been just precipitously decreasing. It's been abysmal. It's very, very sad to see the mental state that Joe Biden is in now. Imagine Joe Biden after, by November, let alone at the end of 4 more years. And Joe Biden would be in a terrible place when it comes to mental health as well. And he would just be aged to a dangerously scary degree. So I think that this is best for Joe Biden because this will probably extend his life expectancy. He's not going to die in like 1 or 2 years, I don't think. Maybe he'll live 3, 4, 5 more years. That's what I'm hoping anyways. I don't wish any ill of the man, even though I don't like his policies. So yeah, that's one positive. Another positive for Democrats as well is that they are going to have the opportunity to have a better, stronger candidate, or at least someone who is not on the brink of death. Right? We have Kamala Harris, who she is young. She is, I don't know. Well, I don't know if she's youthful, but she doesn't have any gray hairs. So that's a positive. She can speak, ? She says some questionable things sometimes, but she can speak to a certain degree. So I think that, and also if it's the case that Kamala Harris does not end up being the nominee, the Democrats find a way to pick someone else, then that's even better. Gavin Newsom, I think, would be an extremely strong candidate. Gavin Newsom, I think, is the only one of the pack that I've seen who I feel like could win a general election. I don't think he'll be able to win this one, but he definitely could win a presidential election someday. He's one of those people who you put in your back pocket for later and like, okay, I might pull you out when the time is right. So I think this is good for Democrats, not bad news for Republicans, because I don't think there's anyone at this point who can run against Trump and beat him. After the failed assassination attempt on him, he's kind of etched his mark in American history. He's basically got legendary status because, hey, how many presidential candidates, just like get shot on a random Saturday and then are just like, yeah, let's go, America, USA, fight. And then just keep it pushing and then have like crowds of adoring fans following you all across the country. I just feel like that combination is nearly unbeatable. Even the people who are not part of the MAGA cult are now, but who are like sort of in the middle, are now like, you know what? I kind of want to vote for Donald Trump because this is kind of cool, like this dude is taking a bullet for the American people and he is still just out here rallying as if nothing had ever happened. So because of all those factors, I don't think that Donald Trump is going to lose this upcoming election. And so this is not even an L for him. So very fascinating. It's really interesting to watch this as it unfolded. And I'm looking forward to seeing how things shape up, because even when you know how it's going to end, it's like a good movie. Even though you know how it's going to end, sometimes it can still be thrilling, exciting, and satisfying to watch everything unfold. So I will be observing this, hopefully with you guys. This is going to be a lot of fun.